Laura Loomer met with the president and the national security advisor in the Oval Office, demanded that a bunch of people be fired who work in the national security apparatus, including some senior people. And those people, many of those people, not all of them, were fired. Did she cause the firing? The president suggested not necessarily, but most people think she did. She's been on this platform. She's a very controversial figure. I predict that we'll find out that the circumstances under which she got that meeting have upset some people, and we'll see when she next gets into the Oval Office. But here's what she put on social media, 105, after the announcement was made that people she wanted fired were fired. Look at the people who are crying about my meeting with President Trump and firing of NSC and NSA officials today. The people crying are the ones who worked to undermine Donald Trump, members of the Democratic Party, and the mainstream media. They are furious. That's how you know these people needed to be fired. We need to protect Donald Trump. Vetting matters. Sean, was Laura Loomer a factor when you served in the White House?
No.
No. So what do you make of her influence during the campaign when she appeared headed for a lot of influence? Other people around the president protested. How did this happen, and what's the meaning of it to you?
So I can honestly say I have no knowledge of what happened yesterday, so I'm going to give you my analysis without feeling like but I think that she was used as meaning you can't just walk into the White House and you can't obviously walk into the Oval Office. So somebody approved both of those actions, right? That being said, so she is being used. There's somebody who wants to undermine Mike Waltz. And I think that this was great. You get to be the vessel. I'll use you to come in, plead your case. Just as a side note, according to the reporting, Waltz was in the Oval for a separate meeting, as was Howard Lutnick, which is very Trumpian, which is 5 meetings collide at once, and the next thing you know, everybody's in there having a discussion and walking in and out.
The next thing you know, the agriculture secretary is picking Houthi bombing targets.
Yeah, well, I've seen some very interesting things over my time, and but so just so it wasn't like Waltz was just random. I mean, he happened to be in there when she was escorted in, and so the point is, she was used as like a heat-seeking missile to disrupt what's going on at the NSC, to undermine Waltz, and that's, to me, just plain and simple. This was the old school equivalent of leaving an article on the desk in the library in his office just to make sure he saw it because you were trying to create an action.
Dan, I often point out media double standards that work in favor of against the Republicans. If a Democrat equivalent of Laura Loomer went into the Biden or Obama Oval Office and demanded the firing of national security officials, it would be just a massive controversy. This is getting some coverage, as far as I'm concerned, not necessarily enough. What do you make of what happened and the meaning of it?
It's just crazy does crazy. I mean, it's unbelievable. We're not talking about the agriculture department or the Department of Education, like senior staff. National security people, cyber security, which is one of the most at-risk parts of the infrastructure of the United States, and a right-wing provocateur just walked in. To my knowledge, Laura Loomer is neither a national security nor a cybersecurity expert. She is a grievance machine in the MAGA universe, entertainment, and she fired people. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, again, I would just say, just remember what the case was. It wasn't like Bob or Susie are bad at their job. It's that they are never Trumpers undermining the president's agenda. And I sort of, and I'm not taking away from it, I just sort of find to me, it was funny because one of the comments that when I was talking with somebody yesterday, I said, how the hell does she know who these people are? Right. I mean, this is why I go back to my analysis. She was sent in there as a heat-seeking missile to take people out intentionally.
Right. Well, then if that is true, that is what they are, please put the proof forward. Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Let me say something that's obvious, but I think needs to be said. These people were vetted and hired and thought to be the best possible people to take these important jobs. So she came in and she said they weren't vetted right, but they were vetted. And so it speaks, if the president's judgment is, you know what, these are the wrong people, that's 7, as far as I know, maybe 9 wrong people in senior jobs who turned out not to be the right people. That's not great.
But Mark, so this is interesting because yesterday, not one of those folks, but somebody else that I know who allegedly was denied something. I sort of asked, I said, look, let me just, God, I can't remember, what could they have possibly done? And this sort of, it was like, well, they didn't, but so and so that they're affiliated with. And I was like, so now it's, again, it's sort of an interesting, to your point about vetting. It's there's some of it's that legit. What have you done? What is your qualifications for this job? And then there's the rumor part of it, which is, I know that Halpern was in the room 2 years ago. He'd said this to so and so, and that doesn't come up on a vet. But that's sort of the anecdotal piece of the political part, which is, where are your alliances? And that's where I sort of am intrigued, because in this administration right now, you've got some people, you think about some of the highest members of this cabinet who within the last 5 years have said some pretty horrible things about President Trump.
Yeah, vice president.
Well, not
Elon
five.
Musk.
Yeah.
But
We keep going.
others who are alleged to have been in a room and didn't object when some, and I'm going, to me,
But John, I'd say Sergio Gore, the head of personnel, we know from lots of reporting that they have vetted people for loyalty, right?
correct. But what I'm telling you is that's the difference is, I looked through and I don't see anything on Mark Halpern's social media and and there's nothing that you said. But then I find out, I come to you and I say, oh, Dan Turrentine says there was one time in a meeting. And so if I believe him,
Understood.
that's not going to come up in a vetting report.
Understood. Well, no, because they did try to vet people for that. So what I'm saying is, if Laura Loomer is right, that these people, based on the facts she presented, don't clear the bar of loyalty as defined by this administration, shame on the vetters for not finding it, because they did try to find it. Why is Laura Loomer better than the White House Personnel Office at unferreting these disqualifying circumstances?
Well, I actually, that's what I'm arguing, I guess, is that it's not like, hey, here's the tweet that they sent out where they said you're a horrible person.
Yeah.
It's all anecdotal, which is, I heard 5 times this person. That's
Right.
never going to come up in a vet.
Well, of course it could, because Laura Loomer could find it. Why is she better at finding things than they are?
Well, no, that's presupposing that what she's coming up with is actual evidence versus.
Well, it was enough to get them fired.
I agree with you.
Whatever
Or
you
I
wanna
remember
call
a time when the administration talked about the best and the brightest. Now they have their own DEI programs. This is unbelievable.
it. All right.